What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the first official episode. Look Who's Chalking 2023/2024. Gary, it's week one. I understand, not your favorite week, not my favorite week, but just like every year, we go into it saying, we're gonna be moderate gamblers. We're not gonna invest too much. But after a full summer of baseball and U.S. Open tennis, a couple of UFC fights that I found a little interesting, but I just want to dive in, even though it's not the smartest thing to do. I'm going to try to, put the reins on it and hold back. But I think once this weekend comes along, I don't know, I'm just going to start pushing chips into the pot. How you feeling now that we're here? I know you weren't too excited last time. Are you equally as unexcited, or do you have some jitters?
No, I'm really, really excited. It's one of those things that once it comes around, as you can see my wife in the background. Once it comes around,
it's about time. We got to bring the looks up on your half of the screen.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. Luckily, I think my son looks more like her for his sake.
No, you're good.
Once it comes around, you just realize how much you've missed it. And honestly, because I've been doing best ball drafts all summer and everything like that, I definitely have been missing it more. I think I was just watching the beginning of your Odds Shopper video. Nice little plug for you. The first one came out today. And you compared it to the long night. The long winter is finally over, and here we are. So now I'm pumped, man. I'm really happy to be back. I was telling you guys a little bit off air. Crazy, just figuring out my schedule with the baby, and doing a lot of content for ETR and football being around. Obviously, wanted to get my own playing and gambling in, but once I get in that groove, man, I'll be super pumped. So happy to be back.
Absolutely, and without beating around the bush too much, what I forecasted about this week one, and what happens every single year, it's the only week. It's like in between the SEC champion. I hate college football still to this day, but it's like when that SEC championship, or I'm sorry, like the college football playoff round one happens, and then weeks happen until the national championship. It's the only week of DFS where they put the prices out early August, and then you allow a whole assortment of things to unravel. The Jonathan Taylor debacle, this Cooper Kupp hamstring, every little injury, something as silly as Jeff Wilson going on IR. And you have a bunch of people now who are going to be unbelievably affordable. There's going to be tons of Van Jefferson in lineups, and there's going to be so many bargains. It really becomes the weird bargain week. Which bargain goes off, and who avoided the bad bargains, who took the good bargains? It's almost not even who made the best DFS lineup. So I really feel like that was kind of a good sniff in a way, and that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be picking your bargains.
Yeah, DraftKings, I guess they just take what receivers were drafted early and kind of boost up their price a little bit. Like Jordan Addison, first round pick is $5,100. For some reason, Zay Flowers is like the next pick. He's $4,000. Then you got Marvin Mims and these second round guys that are going to be chalk out of the wazoo because they're $3K. So you got a ton of value. We've known about it for weeks. Now kind of the injury situations coming in. We know Cooper Kupp's going to be out. You mentioned the Rams receiver situation. Tutu Atwell, Stone Min, Van Jefferson, 4,700 on DraftKings. So you got these guys that are going to be super chalky. We spoke about Jamal Williams a couple weeks ago, rightfully projecting right now on ETR as our second highest owned running back after only Austin Eckler. So these we could kind of figure out what these situations are. And similar to what we spoke about a couple weeks ago, figuring out which of those good chalk, bad chalk is more pertinent on this week than any other week. Obviously, every week there's going to be good chalk, bad chalk. Week one, it's more important to get it right because the chalk is going to condense around really questionable plays only because of pricing. The one thing that you do have going for you is you don't have to play it. Like, there's so many games. There's so many different ways to play this slate. If you don't like that really, really chalky chalk, maybe it's a good play, maybe it's not. If you don't like it, you don't have to go there. So we'll talk through all those options. It's going to be fun. I don't like playing at the same volume week one. I talked about the couple of reasons last time, between the bigger tournaments, kind of like the uncertainty around data and my own schedule this week. I think I'm going to still be sticking more to single entry 3-max stuff, but obviously we'll still be making our tournament lineup.
Out of curiosity, this is something I've always wondered. If I entered as many DraftKings lineups as I possibly could, money's not an issue. What is the total price on that?
If you were 150ing the milli, or you're saying
no? If I entered all the DraftKings tournaments for the week,
there are people that play so close to 6 figures a weekend. I mean, if you think about it, you could do, especially in in this week, but you could do any of the $2,500 tournaments. There are some that are $400 3 max, like
I only say that because
Thunderdome
I
is 5,300. Like the pros, the rich pros, they'll get close to six figures, 50K to six figures per week that they're entering for sure.
I only say that because I think this is the kind of week like that actually benefits them, just because of,
yeah, for sure,
obviously no teams on buys, and then they get to play all the variation of all of these cheap players that arise for a whole multitude of reasons. Something that I was able to kind of decide when I was looking at the slate. Fortunately, for me, at least, a lot of the games look kind of crusty to me. I always try to pick out the games that, like, oh, you think that one's going to be good, but I feel like we used to have a name for it, like the one that was going to like bust out. Everyone has their money on it, but no, you got like division matchups, Bengals, Browns. I could stay away from something like that. Even something like the Eagles going up to New England, Belichick's going to have some sort of good defense. At least my only way that I can cope as closer to a Charlie Bucket type of player is that at least there aren't that many matchups that I like. And I need something like that to try to shave some of this down, because obviously there's a whole litany of games this weekend,
Yeah, I think on the main slate, we've only got 150 point over under, and that's Dolphins Chargers, which we spoke about. Did I freeze? Which we spoke about last time. I know when our Joe Blow Public wanted to. Yeah. Okay, hopefully back there. I know our Joe Blow Public friend wanted to reach out to that Chargers Dolphins game, which makes sense. It's a 50.5. I think after that, you got a bunch of in the mid 40s, and even in those ones in the mid 40s, if you want to attack those 45, 46, 47, as you said, I think there's nits to be picked in all of those, whether it's kind of a division matchup that could be a little bit dustier, or even something like Seahawks Rams is 46.5. You're going to get a lot of chalk around the Rams, so that's one reason to stay away from it. Plus, like, can the Rams push in that game? Like, I have no idea what to expect out of the Rams, So, and Eagles Patriots 45.5. Something a little fishy about that game with Philadelphia going to New England. Bucks Vikings 45.5. I like the Vikings side. I have no idea if Baker Mayfield and the Bucks can push. So like there are holes to be poked in every.
Do you remember when we called him the star ruiner? By the way, and by we I mean me. Remember I was saying how he ruined McCaffrey and he ruined like he can truly ruin the best of them. Watch Mike Evans. 1,000 yards every single year of his career. This will be the final stamp on Mayfield's ruining, because that's a true. Every other quarterback got him to 1,000 except for you, but I don't know if he can push either. I don't know.
I agree with you. By the way, I think Evans' only saving grace would be if he gets traded. I know there's talk around that. You don't get those like NFL trade deadline trade very often. If there were to be a season that it would happen,
I think that you're starting to see it actually shift towards a fantasy mindset. You used to never see trades. When Braylon Edwards got traded to the Jets, it was the biggest news around. And now you see this stuff more often. Like you saw McCaffrey get moved, and
yeah, that's true. That's true. So, I mean, I think Mike Evans is a candidate to get traded. I think Devontae Adams is a candidate to get traded. I guess the Jets would be the favorite there. But, some interesting things that can shake things up for your season-long stuff. But we're here to talk about DFS. You mentioned that Bucks game. Like, Chris Godwin right now, I think is projecting as, like, super chalky just because of how cheap he is also on DraftKings. So, like, there's so many ways you can pivot around on week one. And I'm excited to kind of dig in and find those little gold nuggets of plays because they're out there for sure.
I would imagine that people are going to take a Jacksonville Jaguars stack. They're indoors over there in Indianapolis, a young team. It's going to be a rookie quarterback. I would imagine that people are excited. That's one of the many games from a sports betting perspective. It looks like a series of rats out there. I just, a philosophy I typically have is I don't really like betting against teams during their home openers. How many times do you see a team have 2 wins all year, but one comes in that home opener where they play above their head? And that's why I had mentioned the Patriots. And as far as teams on the slate, I know there are other ones, but the Steelers scare me. in terms of like, because San Francisco is favored by 2.5. If you were to tell somebody what they think the line on that game would be, it would be like -6 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like everyone's going to be on those teams, and there could be sometimes I try to parlay what I think about those Rats covering at home into some potential DFS plays and DFS stayaways, as weird as that sounds. I mean, not much data backing that other than trusting the sniffs. So those are just a couple games.
Let's talk that Jaguar side. I think that's a really interesting one. And actually this game as a whole, because Anthony Richardson's like the big X factor of fantasy football this year, right? Like even these rushing quarterbacks in their rookie years when they're not efficient or good by NFL real life standards, they've always cracked like top 10 quarterback seasons from a fantasy point perspective. So, let's talk about the Jaguar side. I think this is a very interesting spot to get different. Early projections, obviously, this is going to change a lot, but early ownership projections for DraftKings, we've got Christian Kirk at 11%. No one else on the Jaguars are we projecting for much ownership at all. We got like Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Trevor Lawrence, Zay Jones, all between like 4 and 7%.
Really?
Great plays great plays all around, in my opinion. Calvin Ridley seems really good. I'm sure it's going to be more than this early projection because he's only 6,500, but it seems like owners, the way that the field is projected to play right now, it's either going to be, you're going to have the money to spend up because there's all this value. So you're going to get a lot of Justin Jefferson, a lot of Tyreek Hill. And we already mentioned people wanting to kind of attack that Chargers-Dolphins game. So you're going to get a lot of Tyreek Hill. Jefferson, those guys are projected for like over 20%. So this kind of like 6-7K tier is kind of maybe getting lost in the shuffle a little bit. Ridley seems super interesting to me. ETN, we'll get to the lineup I make later. He's someone that I think is a very, very interesting play because if you like the Jaguars side, a lot of buzz on Tank Bigsby that he's going to eat in on the goal line work, etc. I think he's going to be more eased in as a true rookie, like actual number 2. Maybe he'll steal some short yardage stuff. I'm not too worried about that, but I do think they're going to go with the veteran if they're playing from ahead, right? Plus, I don't think he's the best pass catcher in the world. Etienne.
The veteran who just played his first year last year.
It's his third NFL season. He had 200 plus carries. You know what I'm saying? The incumbent, right? If you will.
Yeah.
And
I feel like they're still trying to get his confidence going. He was, he had some shaky hands. I mean, just the fantasy community, they do this every year. I understand there's reason to get excited about people. And yeah, maybe at some point, but week 1, when you're trying to get this team started off on the right foot, I don't think you're getting a 50-50 split with a rookie. I think ETN's going to handle the majority of the work.
I agree.
And in a stadium like that, he has that breakaway speed. I mean, that's built to be a great
he's
sneaky
the exact
play.
Kind of week 1 player at right under 7K that's going to fall through the cracks here. He's just going to fall through the cracks. Like he's projecting for 6% ownership right now. I don't see that going for more, like getting more up into double digits. I just don't see it unless something weird happens later in the week where like I don't know, something happens. But yeah, so I mean, Trevor Lawrence projecting as a good value. Ridley's a good value. Zay Jones only 4,500, had like 121 targets last year. I don't know if I could trust that with Ridley coming in, but hey, if you want to get away from the field from a cheap wide receiver play, that's an option for you. So I think Jaguar stacks are absolutely in play across the board. However you want to play it, all those guys will make my player pool for sure.
I do have good news. Last time I said I'm going to figure out some sneaky way, play some low percentage guys so that I can take Jamal Williams and put him in my lineup. I've decided that I don't necessarily need to have him in my lineup. I don't know how well he's going to run. All I know is that he's just going to get a whole ton of checkdowns from Derek Carr. So I think for me, Jamal Williams, since he's going to be such chalk anyway, I think he's going to be on the sportsbook side of things for me. That's going to be like my week 1 best bet, the over on his catches. And if I have enough on him over there, then I won't feel obligated to shove him in all my lineups because Tennessee always does seem to have a bastard run defense. Always. And, that's just something that maybe
I think
I'll have him in some.
So we could play a game of good chalk, bad chalk. Not to steal from my friends Drew Dinkmeyer, Mike Leone at Establish the Run, who do their tournament show as well, and they do good chalk, bad chalk. But like this is a good week to kind of have that exercise. I tend to think Jamal Williams is pretty okay to good chalk, just simply with what that role is. Still waiting to see if Kendre Miller is going to play. If he does play, I don't know if I'm too worried about that. I think he would get a legitimate role if he plays, but still a rookie who's coming off an injury. Like I don't think he's getting more than like 6 to 8 carries. So Jamal Williams is going to have a ton of work. We know he could catch the ball. As you mentioned, Derek Carr is going to check down. He's projecting for like 18%, which obviously a lot on a huge slate. But, we were seeing Josh Jacobs last year get to like 30% when like these very clear spots and he'd hit, right? So like I'm reframing chalk. I just don't want to be I don't want to be avoiding chalk just because it's chalk. We still want to hit the right plays, right?
Yeah.
Jamal Williams, I tend to think would be a solid play. I think I would try to be like, if I was MMEing this week, I think I'd try to be around field with Jamal Williams. I wouldn't come in aggressively under. I also wouldn't take an aggressive over stance just because it's week one. So many running backs on the slate. Weird shit could happen. But what's going to help them is like these weird situations that the other side of that Indianapolis game, Jacksonville game, right? We don't have Jonathan Taylor now. Deion Jackson was a guy people like to play last year. He's only 4,100. He's projecting for double digits. So just there's enough other variants where he might not get steamed up as much as we think, but he's certainly going to be a popular play.
Who else is on your chalk radar?
So I mean, let's talk about that super expensive receiver tier, because if people want to play them, you can play them because of the pricing you have. So right now, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, the three receivers on the slate over 8K, all projecting between like 15 and 25% ownership on early runs. It's a lot. It's a lot on a 13 game slate or whatever this is. So the way I would like to play that, it's hard to call any of them terrible plays. I don't love Tyreek Hill at 26% on as a one-off play.
I don't like Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow not really playing during training camp. We saw how they played week one with no training camp last year, and Burrow really struggled out of the gate. And, on the road against Cleveland, where he struggled immensely last year, that's a crusty environment, man. Those Cleveland people over there. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be an easy game to break out.
That crowd's going to be ready to go, right? Like they're super pumped for this team. The reason I'm with you, kind of like, I don't really want to play any of these guys. Jefferson's the one exception where, like, if I can afford him, I want to make sure I have my share, because it's Tampa Bay, and like he could just catch 14 balls for 120 yards and touchdown and just call it a day.
Yeah.
But so he'd be the guy.
I remember when if you didn't have him last year, week one against the Packers, what happened to your life?
Right. So he'd be my favorite of the three. But the reason I would stay away from this tier and call it kind of more bad chalk than good is because there's so many pivots, right? We have so many great receivers on the slate that are slightly cheaper that are coming through with so much less ownership. Obviously, Devontae Adams, not a great matchup with Denver, but Devontae Adams, 7,900, no one's going to play him. A.J. Brown, 7,600, no one's going to play him. His teammate, Devonta Smith, 7,200, literally no one's seeming to play him. Jalen Waddle is going to get them ownership because people are going to attack that game, but he's looking at like 12% compared to Tyreek's 26%. So if you want to just do the direct pivot plus the salary saving on that, you got that. And you got DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Lockett, Ridley, I already mentioned, Olave, I think will get some. But, all these guys, a fraction or half the ownership, cheaper, similar ceilings. I'm not saying the exact same ceiling, but similar ceilings. So I'd rather play these lower owned guys. So for me, that super expensive receiver tier, if they're all going to get steamed up the way they're projected for right now, slightly bad chalk, I'd say. You have any takes on those dudes? Well, yeah, you gave them, I guess, on Jamar. Yeah.
On the high tier, I'm going to need to have some Jefferson just at home against the Bucks. I know they're 6-point favorites. Who knows? That can be some sort of trap game or something like that. But that's one I need to. I can really lay off the other two and not sweat too much about it. I mean, I think there's probably a better chance for Tyreek. Something tells me he always kills the Chargers. But I definitely have no problem staying off of Chase. That game altogether, other than I think Nick Chubb is just going to go absolutely. I mean, Lord knows how many touches they're going to give him. He shredded them at home last year. And I want to see if I can get that first Chubb without any sort of competition. And I know there was something to something. If I can get my first Chubb,
you want to get a full Chubb in there. I get it. I can't blame you on that one. Other chalk options.
That's how you name podcasts, by the way. You want to name for the episode full Chubb.
There you go. So we got the Jamal Williams chalk right when we kind of prognosticated a month out. Also, the Marvin Mims thing. He's looking like the most popular receiver on the slate, I believe. Yeah, he's right up there. He's like in the same exact tier as Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson. So he's Stoneman, 3K. Raiders matchup doesn't scare you at all. Jerry Jeudy did return to practice on a limited basis today. I don't think he suits up in week 1, but maybe his timetable was better than people thought. Assuming Jerry Judy's out, you have this rookie Marvin Mims going to run every route. But, ton of chalk around Stone Min. See, this is where you really kind of get into the, okay, is it so cheap that you just project volume, you project him being on the field, he's that cheap, even if he doesn't fully hit. He might not kill you.
Yeah, okay, well, why isn't anybody saying this about Devontae Parker? Because he'll be out there for every single snap, and he'll be out there. It's because people are gassing themselves up on a player who may be that, but we just don't know it yet.
Well,
not to mention, we don't know if Russell Wilson's going to complete. Huh?
Parker's 41. He's 1,100 more. Like, if you want that money,
I know, but if he was even if he was 3,000, nobody would say to play him. It's just a thing where, yeah, I get it. Because he's going to be out there every snap, and he's 3,000.
Yeah. That's he's projecting for
you get what I'm saying, though. It's like, I think,
but there are pivots. There are other rookie receivers that if I'm playing very large field tournaments, especially leverage is leverage, right? So even if he doesn't kill you at 3K, because he gets 4 for 40, say, or something like that, which is very much in play because he's going to play. Assuming Jude doesn't play. So 4 for 40 is fine at 3K, right? We're still shooting for absolute nuts, especially week 1 here. If you're playing the $5 milli, which is over 1 million people, like, look for these pivots.
You need that royal flush. You need a royal flush.
You really need the royal flush in that one, right? So you're 4 for 40 for Marvin Mims at 3K. He's probably not getting it done on a 13-game slate to absolutely win. Could you come top 10 with that? Probably, if you had everything else around it. But we're looking to win tournaments. Go to, how ugly is it playing a Cardinal receiver in a 38.5 point over-under with, we don't even know who's playing quarterback. But Michael Wilson, guy that's going to be out there for every 2 receiver set. He's a rookie also. He's also 3K. No one's playing him. That's an option for you. Like, there's going to be these other 3K receivers.
Oh my God, that's like a fake name that you fill out on a form. Michael Wilson. That's who we're putting on there.
But Jaden Reed,
I know he doesn't have an icon on DraftKings. I know for a fact he's just one of those gray heads. They did not take a photo with this guy.
Good looking prospect, Michael Wilson. It's the Cardinals. What about Jaden Reed though? Packers. That game could be a little ugly with the Bears, but right now Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson both dealing with some soreness or something, hamstring soreness or something.
Yeah, hamstrings.
He's locked into that wide receiver 3 role. I think he's more talented than Romeo Doubs as a player to begin with. And he's a rookie. Like, you have to play. The 3K guys are all going to be rookies, but these are guys that are going to be out there, project well. Reed is going to project for a little bit more ownership than a guy like Michael Wilson, but the point stands. You can play these guys. I would rather take shots on these rookies that are going to be out there than the super, like, as a pivot to Mims, than Tutu Atwell, for example, who's also 3K. Who's going to come through with a ton of ownership now as well.
There's a ton of ownership that I'm going to have to be willing to eat just because I know you had mentioned, like, we don't know, are the Rams going to be able to keep up with them up there in Seattle? I mean, this is Stafford here. We know even on those garbage Lions team, he's chucking them. He's chucking. He's not going to be like, oh, I don't have my receiver. He's just going to stand in shotgun and wing some sidearm passes. I have to play some Tyler Higbee in there. I just have to, because I know
he's not going to be that chalky because for some crazy reason that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, he's coming through with some ownership. He's not going to be that chalky because he's 4,800. That's a lot for a tight end. He's more than Evan Ingram. He's more than Dalton Schultz. He's more than Kyle Pitts. More than Cole Kmet. More than Gerald Everett. It's like he's in that same tier as all those guys. He's above them. He's only 200 less than Dallas Goedert. So he's expensive, which is great for DFS. He'll get some ownership, but somebody from the Rams is getting there, right? So Tutu Atwell's is 3K. He's going to be the chalkiest of the bunch because he's so cheap. He should be out there for most routes. He got targeted when he had that expanded roll down the stretch last year, but not somebody that I'm super excited about. Van Jefferson will be owned. He's 4,700. I don't think our current ownership projection is correct on him. I think we're at like 8 or 9%. I think he'll get higher than that. So he'd be the guy that I like as a little bit of a pivot to Atwell. And then you can take shots. You can take shots here because, there's a couple options for you behind them. I wouldn't go Ben Skoranek because I just think he's bad, but they really like their rookie, Puka Nacua. Another 3K pivot for you. And the reason I love him as a pivot is, again, we're trying to hit the nuts in week 1, million entries. This is a pivot to both Marvin Mims and Tutu Atwell and the other Rams talk. So, there's a lot of options for you. I agree with you. You do want to take some Rams. I probably want some Geno stacks with Rams on the coming back, and just totally fine with Rams as one-offs. Most of your lineups should probably have a Ram because somebody's going to get there, I think.
Yeah, I just, especially when we hear that Matt Stafford via his wife's podcast, he goes, I can't even talk to these kids. They're just on TikTok immediately after the phone. I don't know who any of these kids are. So that means we're going to be hitting up those veterans, those guys that he does know. And there were many games last year where Tyler Higbee was targeted a bunch. It just feels like Tyler Higbee's that guy. David Njoku's another one of these guys. Every year we hear how it's going to be a good year. I just think that it's completely different because there truly is nobody reliable to throw it to over there in Los Angeles. So I really think, man, even like season long, anything like that, I think he's just going to be one of those.
I love Higbee this year.
High floor, just maybe not the highest ceiling kind of guy. And just a random tight end I wanted to throw in there that I haven't heard one thing about. Everybody just hasn't even mentioned him. He goes at the end of drafts, and with a young quarterback and no legitimate receivers, I don't know why nobody talks about him. Why does everybody disregard Dalton Schultz? Out of curiosity. I mean, nobody talks about this guy ever.
Yeah, and Houston gave him money. Like, he's going to be out there a lot. I don't know how I feel about playing too many of those Texans guys. But as a week one tight end who should see some volume, I have no issues with it whatsoever. He's boring. It's all it is. It's just unsexy, right? It's like Deontay Johnson at receiver. Like, no one wants to play him. He's not fun. But the guy had like 180 targets last year and somehow didn't find the end zone. Like, these are guys that I want to play, that the field doesn't want to play because they're boring names. So I'm with you on Schultz. Definitely with you on Higbee, who's going to be somewhat popular just by default. But yeah, tight end this week. If Mark Andrews is out, which looks like he's going to be questionable, Kittle's questionable. So there could be some guys that get steamed up, right? If Andrews doesn't play, likely he's going to be super popular in a game that I'm sure people are going to attack the Ravens. Lamar will be an option, I think, for everyone. You mentioned early season Lamar. This is against Houston. So there will be some ownership condensing around some guys. But you can go, man, Dallas Goedert doesn't have much ownership. Evan Ingram has very little ownership. We mentioned the Jaguars stuff already. Schultz, nothing. You can't get me to play Kyle Pitts until I see it, but nothing there.
Yeah, I know. And Lamar is going to be the most owned guy, right?
I don't know if it's going to be Lamar or if it's going to be one of the Chargers guys.
It just
Lamar's
seems like against.
Lamar's projecting fourth highest right now. Ironically, Anthony Richardson, which we didn't really end up talking about the Colts side, is projecting as the highest owned. Which, again, that rushing floor, and it's the price. I talked about.
But do you know what that lets me know right there? That lets me know that we've hit that point in DFS. I always used to joke that paying cash tolls is going to be the new Easy Pass because everybody has Easy Pass, and there's actually a buildup of cars on the Easy Pass lane. That's showing me that more seasoned vets and pros play DFS. Your average person's never taking Anthony Richardson. Like your average chalk. Joe Blow Public is not going to be taking Anthony Richardson. In fact, when we talked to Joe Blow Public, he revealed his idiotic lineup to us last time. He has given us a reformed lineup. So we have Joe Blow Public,
oh my God,
who's about to,
and I'm here to give you my week one fantasy picks on DraftKings for the $5 millionaire entry. Now, am I going to win $1 million from my basement where I belong? Probably not, but here are my picks anyway. Now, we discussed a Chargers stack, and I am sticking with that, but I've made some changes. At quarterback, we're going to stick with Justin.
Well, as you probably remember, he had 3 receivers with Justin Herbert last time. 3 receivers. Eckler, I think. In the week that you claimed you need a royal flush from 10 to ace of spades, he went with everyone on the Chargers team.
Literally, he went 2 receivers, Gerald Everett and Austin Eckler.
He's got a long way to go, but it is week 1, so he has time to learn. Now let's get the lineup.
Going against the Dolphins, I expect this to be a very high-scoring game. So Herbert's going to find his points. So we have Herbert at quarterback, running back Eckler. It goes without saying he's going to catch some passes out of the backfield. He may score some donkey touchdowns at the goal line. So let's go with Herbert, Eckler, and now let's move on to the wide receiver position. I'm going to start with Mike Williams. I think he's 5,600. It could be 57. I'm not sure. But he's a lot cheaper than Keenan Allen. and I could see a double on Keenan Allen resulting in touchdowns for Mike Williams. Now, on the other side of that, I'm going to say Quentin Johnson, the first-round pick out of TCU, might be a nice option. It might a little dart throw. A little dart throw.
Wait, is he
in
still
a GPP.
going with three?
If you're stacking, you might want to throw Quentin Johnson in there. First-round pick out of TCU might have been the best wide receiver pick in this draft. We're going to move on from the Chargers.
Oh, you're finally going to move on from the Chargers? I think, did he just name all the Chargers minus Keenan Allen?
I'll say this. If you Quentin Johnston will not be played. He is 4,400 receiver who's buried as the fourth receiver on the depth chart right now.
He's
Josh Palmer's ahead of him. So he's 4,400 compared to the other 3K receivers. No one's playing Quentin Johnson. So if you want to get different, listen to Mr. Joe Blow Public over here and do your triple Charger stack.
I do want to. I'll use that idiotic beginning of a lineup to actually point out something to you that I said last time. Another easy stay away for me, just because I'm not like a mass entry kind of guy, is Austin Eckler. Early in the year, I have a little less faith in him. It always seems like they're cognizant of his workload at the beginning of the year, especially when they have their full complement of receivers. And then as those guys start to fall off, they start to utilize them a little bit more in the passing game. If there's a week that it's easy for me to stay away from Eckler, even in this high-scoring game, this would probably be the one.
Yeah, I mean, Kellen Moore coming over, obviously like to use two backs when in Zeke's heyday, right? Pollard and Zeke were pretty split. I think that Josh Kelly, a lot of hype out of him out of camp. I'm with you on the early stuff. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some goal line. Like, just enough there, especially with him being projected as the highest one running back, which is not surprising that Joe Blow Public wants him in the lineup. Enough there for me to side with you as kind of Ben chalk on the Eckler front.
Interestingly enough about Mike Williams, one of your guys at ETR, I mean, this was something I heard, but something that I didn't know was, so Kellen Moore says they're going to be using Mike Williams out of the slot a little bit. The only time that he was experimenting doing that was the beginning of last year, and he was putting up something like top 10 receiver numbers when he got some of that utilization out of the slot, some easy catches. I mean, the guy's kind of a freak when you watch him play. It's pretty surprising that they don't have more plays to get him a quick slant up the middle and see how far he could take it and see his yards after contact. So Williams is definitely a guy that could really make some strides.
I love Mike Williams this year. He's one of my highest owned players in basketball. And, I think the big slot is like a new thing that's happening a lot in the NFL. You're going to see Allen Robinson playing the slot a lot in Pittsburgh. He might be cooked. But just in general, these like bigger receivers playing the slot instead of those shiftier guys. I think it's smart, especially when they're these possession guys that just win one-on-one battles. Like you're going against a 5'10" slot corner, or maybe you're forcing an outside corner to come inside and be a little bit less comfortable. And Mike Williams, still young, trending in the right direction. Keenan Allen, we mentioned last week, wrong side of 30. That if he's playing in the slot, that means Keenan Allen has to go out. Keenan Allen has to go outside. Keenan Allen's expensive. We are still talking full point PPR. I don't want to disregard Keenan Allen altogether. But I'm more on the Mike Williams bandwagon to start the season for sure.
That's a funny little shift we've made, huh? From 2009 and Wes Welker being in the slot.
Yeah.
And you always send your small white guy to the slot. Now you just send your jacked monsters to the slot. I mean, this is a pretty funny, it's the polar opposite.
Totally. And you still do get those traditional slot guys, right? Like the Giants signed Cole Beasley, and they're going to be throwing, Paris Campbell in the slot. He's a little guy. Like you do get those guys depending on the offense, but you create mismatches fast with the big slot. And like, especially those guys that just win one-on-ones that are big possession guys. Mike Williams doesn't get a lot of separation. He's just a monster. And then, once you get the ball in his hands, we'll look out. So I'm a Mike Williams fan. Like that pick from Joe Blow Public. Not so much on the Quentin Johnson, Austin Eckler front, but I'm excited to hear what else he's got.
Well, let's check the rest of this disaster.
Now, I'm going to go with Jawan Williams, or is it Javon Williams? Who cares? That's who I'm picking. Javon Williams versus the Raiders. I know he's coming off an ACL for the Broncos.
You mean Javonte?
Sean Payton's going to put him into the passing attack, put him in the running attack. Let's get him. I think he's 5,600. Who cares? He's my other running back.
I will say, Javonte Williams, they tell you never to believe coaches. Did you see that Sean Payton said he's going to be getting a ton of work this weekend, and they only ended up keeping 3 running backs on the roster after final cuts. And I think it's a pretty good sign that he actually might be one of the guys who trends towards defying the ACL numbers.
I'm starting to think that he's more Adrian Peterson than not, and the recovery time. Right? Adrian Peterson's always the classic example of did the full ACL. He might have done MCL, LCL tear too, but did the full thing, and like 3 months later was running up a mountain because he was an absolute freak of nature and came back and was himself and everything else the next year.
Let's not do it yet, though, because remember, we saw James Robinson running through everyone those first 2 weeks last year.
Achilles is a whole different thing still.
Oh yeah, that wasn't Achilles. That wasn't a torn ACL.
But yeah, because no one's really defied Achilles. He's still Donta Foreman's like becoming the closest thing, right? And good for him for having a solid year last year. But he's the closest thing. But ACL is really, usually you are not yourself for a year, but you can make it back. So the Breece Hall, like, I'm curious. Apparently he looks good. Javonte is just like one of those, freak athletes. I'm starting to believe. I had to go 0 RB in my season-long draft last night. It's like a sixth round or something like that. I took Javonte Williams as my RB1 in a 0 RB. So look, I do like the talent. I like, we also mentioned this. Denver has nowhere to go but up from an offensive standpoint. But P. Ryan's a pass catcher. But Javonte, was running a ton of routes. They were dumping it off like crazy to him in preseason. Not to read too much of the preseason stuff, but I don't hate that pick. I'd rather be a wait and see approach for me than play him in week 1.
You can't play him week 1. Can't play
but
him.
Yeah, like for me, who's really going to be playing like 3 max and single entry this week, Javonte Williams is not going to be on those teams. But in tournaments, I don't hate it. I think it's okay.
All right.
We're hoping for some points there. Wide receiver Christian Kirk, formerly out of Arizona. Now he is with Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence's favorite target last year. I think he's 56 or 5,700. Great value. Throw him in there. Christian Kirk. He's my other wide receiver. Tight end, Kyle Pitts. Now, it's been 17 years since Kyle Pitts has been drafted, and eventually he's going to pay off in fantasy. So Kyle Pitts is my pick for week 1 to win $1 million in fantasy on DraftKings. My flex, Deebo Samuel. Great name. Pretty good value. I think he's 5,600, something around there. Anyway, I was able to fit him in. He's going up against the Steelers. I could see him running one in, catching some. He's going to get me at least 12 to 15 points as far as I'm concerned. So he's worth it for me. And on defense, I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks playing against one of the worst teams in football this year. That's right, you heard it. The Rams. The Rams are going to be bad. And I could see the Seahawks cleaning up against the Rams. So let's go through the picks one more time. We have Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Javon Williams, however you want to say it. Quentin Johnson, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Kyle Pitts, Deebo Samuel in the flex, and the Seahawks against the Rams. This has been Joe Blow Public. I'll see you on the other side.
All right, so
I'm sick.
Yes, I'm absolutely sick. I mean, there's if I was in a trial by combat and that was my lineup, I'll just send me to the guillotine. I'm going down. It's over. I mean, there's so much trash in there. Pitts, who we've never seen. Deebo going up against Pittsburgh's D on the road. 18 Chargers. He didn't even pick anybody from Miami.
Doesn't bring back.
All right, well.
Yeah, if you're going
Mr. Joe Blow,
you do need to bring back. Sorry, what was that?
Yes. Do you want to know? Go ahead. Let Gary know how I'm feeling after that.
I swear to God, I'm sick.
Yes, that's exactly what. I'm sick. But Mr. Joe Blow, you can't be 3 guys on one side, or three pass catchers on one side, and then no run back on the other. You need at least one of those guys, even if it's a scam Mostert, so just something. Throw something on the other side. But we're going to make sure Joe Blow, I mean, he needs a worse name than Joe. But Joe Blow is supposed to be okay. He just takes chalky picks. I mean.
I'm glad you brought up Mostert. I think he's going to get steamed up by the end of the week. But right now, somehow, still falling through the cracks a little bit. Obviously, we know Jeff Wilson starting on IR. I don't know Devon A. Chain's status. I don't think he's going to play. That leaves you.
I think he's going to play, but he's listed behind Ahmed in the depth chart for this game.
Yeah, make him earn it type thing. Yeah, we do have a projection on A. Chain, but man, Salvin Ahmed or Ahmed, whatever. He's probably the backup there. Andy and I love a Raheem Mostert. We love the Mike McDaniel, Mike Shanahan running backs. People are attacking this game from every angle. They're seeming to kind of look away from this spot. Even, we're projecting for like 9% right now. Even if that gets up to like 12, 13, I have no issues with Raheem Mostert this week. Pretty good price at 5,400. I think that's a good play. I do.
All right. That's a good play. Why don't you give us a great play? Do you have, looking at this slate, I mean, very hard to find a suit for this wedding that you have to go to this weekend. You have so many options available for you on a week like this. Now, you want to do a little Men's Warehouse pick of the week?
Yes, I absolutely do. Man, we've mentioned a couple guys here. I actually mentioned him early in the podcast, and kind of just call it a sniff, if you will. Call it a sniffer's delight here, Andy style. But something is screaming out to me about Travis Etienne this season. I really don't like him that much. I think he's good, not great. And I think he was getting into a groove a little bit down the stretch last year. He got a lot of goal line carries. There is a little bit of risk to take. He will take some of that game. You want to attack. Everyone's taking Anthony Richardson. Jaguars favored by 5.5, 6.5, whatever points here. Even if it's a little bit fishy on the road, maybe Indy keeps a little closer. He's in line for 20 carries this week. In the dome. You mentioned the straight line speed. Colts D, nothing to write home about necessarily. Middle of the pack. I like Travis Etienne this week. I just think no one's going there, completely falling through the crack. I want to attack a little bit of that game, and I think that's the way I'm going to approach it. So I'll stamp down Travis Etienne as my Men's Warehouse pick of the week here.
Am I going to like the way I look?
I guarantee it.
I think that's an absolutely... that's a great Men's Warehouse, because that's typically what we're looking for in a suit. We're looking something that's form-fitting, that not a lot of people have. It's going to stand out. You're going to be, oh my God, you ETN? Where'd you get that? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go a little higher owned this time, just because when you're looking at all the potential chalk for this week, people are more likely to go for the Jeffersons and whatnot. Nick Chubb getting all the work to himself at home against Cincinnati, who he's burned many times in the past. Deshaun Watson supposedly hasn't looked all that great. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. We know they have a pretty good defense and their line's good, so if they get to burrow it off, they get a lead in that game. I just see the classic 100 and a touchdown with the potential for definitely more. I know you got to pay a lot of money. Sometimes, if you want to pay for things in life, they cost money, all right? You're not living in a nice house without paying. Maybe you can get a nice house in a shitty area, but if you want that nice house in a good area, it ain't going to be in Cleveland or Cincinnati, but you're going to have to pay up for Nick Chubb this weekend on a Sunday where everyone's probably going to be paying for those three receivers Gary talked about. As long as Gary doesn't say, oh, yeah, he's going to be one of the most owned guys, I think that Nick Chubb is worth it, and he's worth being the Men's Warehouse pick of the week simply because of all these high-priced guys. I think maybe he's one that will get a little less attention. So Nick Chubb is my Men's Warehouse pick of the week, which hopefully will bring about a cease and desist order from the actual Men's Warehouse.
I like the way you look. I guarantee it.
I don't know if we're off to too friendly of a start here early on. I like when one of us doesn't like the other picks, but an excellent one, man, because not only does he work as a pivot to those receivers, Eckler's getting a ton of ownership right in range with those receivers. Derrick Henry's getting double-digit ownership. Josh Jacobs looking at double-digit ownership. Christian McCaffrey's looking at double-digit ownership. All in his tier. Is not looking at Bijan Robinson, around 10% right now. Is not getting double-digit ownership or not even getting close. Nick Chubb, it's like 4 or 5% right now projected. And
that means our minds are in the right place to start, man. It's week one, but
it's a pivot to backs. It's a pivot to those receivers, and you can afford it because there's so much value week one. So, that's a great one. And maybe we start a lineup with Chubb and Etienne in the running back position. And what about Juwan? What about Juwan or Javon Williams? Should we be considering him, Juwan Williams on Denver?
Yeah, let's go to Juwan Williams Johnson. And if you can, why don't you, like you typically would in the past, pull up a little blank slate lineup, and then we'll go double Men's Warehouse.
Back to our friends EDS and NFL Weather later in the week.
Oh yeah,
later in the season we'll be back. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, we don't need it's NFLweather.com.
NFLweather.com, one of the best.
We don't need them yet because all you have to write across the board is it's fucking hot as balls out here across the country.
Disgusting. It's fucking gross. Anyway, yeah. So let's start with those two guys because you can afford them, and why not? So Chubb and
Man, Gary's the guy with a new credit card. Oh, we can afford them. 8,000, 7,000. Yeah, just throw them in the cart.
They're gonna look great. So who else do you like, Andy? You want to pick our quarterback here?
I do like Higbee.
Yeah,
we can remove him if we have to. I'm just people didn't, like you said, people didn't want to pay for that. Now, Gary, you might have to find some deals here now. We're not going to be able to get these big expensive wide receivers. So who we thinking for a stack here?
There's plenty of value. Up and down the board. You go to these guys at the 5K range. So, Dotson, there's a lot of hype there. I don't know if you want to attack that Arizona-Washington game, but he's 5K. Nico Collins, if we wanted to play a Lamar lineup, I think he's an interesting bring back. He's projected for like 7 targets, pretty much out of the way. We're not going Dalton Schultz as our tight end. I think that's an interesting play. I don't want to go double ram right now, but if we did take Higbee out, I think Van's definitely there. And then you go down to, you got Zay Flowers at 4K, Elijah Moore at 3,800, although we're playing the Brown already. And then you got all those rookie guys we've already spoken about. So there's a ton of options. I do think in a $1 million person field, it's worth going with one of those 3K rookie receivers that is not named Marvin Mims. I would take a shot on someone personally, whether that's Jaden Reed or Michael Wilson or whomever else. There's a lot of guys though that you could take the shot on. So I'd probably throw one of those guys in there.
So how about let's go to quarterback. Let's see if there's anybody that I can weasel in here who's even remotely affordable. Now, would it be bad considering the lineup, like considering the players that we had? You'd mentioned in the past. Hey, don't worry so much about chalk if you got yourself. If you brought non-chalk to the party, a little chalk later on is fine. It's like dessert. Should we go with Richardson at quarter, like a rushing quarterback, and we already have ETN on the other side of that?
Yeah. So the thing, I have no problem with that. If I'm playing Anthony Richardson week 1 though in this huge tournament, I'm probably doing at least a skinny stack. I think that because this is a 13-person field, a 13-game field in a huge tournament, if he gets there, he has to do something through the air to hit the 30 points. Something. So whether that's a cheap punt tight end, whether that's just paying up for Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce is a value option, whether that is pairing him with Deion Jackson, who's going to be a popular running back play, someone. And I don't think Michael Pittman will be that owned. This is a guy that was perfect week 1 last year.
Nobody's going to play him.
Yeah, so he was perfect week 1 last year. Apparently, people are really liking what they're seeing with the RPO stuff out of Indy, which is going to benefit him a lot, right? Another kind of guy that they can line up all over the field. Big guy can go in the slot, big guy can go outside. Not going to get a lot of attention. So if you want to do that, I would probably throw that skinny stack. And then you got your bring back with ETN. The problem with that is ETN is not the ideal bring back in this situation, right? The ETN narrative is playing from ahead. He helps them get ahead. And then the volume takes them out, right? I don't hate it as a bring back, but if I did this, a Richardson Pittman skinny, I'd want my bring back to probably be a Jacksonville pass catcher, which I'm fine taking. My men's warehouse doesn't need to be in this lineup. That's probably what I'd want. So I'd want
we could let's chuck Richardson and Pittman then.
Yep.
Let's go back to that quarterback. Should we go with Geno? I mean, that's relatively cheap.
I definitely like that. The question is who you're pairing him with, right? I think, again, we're looking for pivots to these big tiers. I think Metcalf will be my guy. I think the Rams defense sucks too. Like one of those.
We already got Higbee coming back. And what was your old philosophy on the single stack double bring back?
It is an option. This is actually a scenario where it could work, right? Straight up salary based. You're playing from behind a lot, where the explosiveness is going to come from the better duo, but the volume coming from the other side might get you there. So it's not, and it automatically makes you unique if you want to try it. It will be a little bit more popular this week in this particular scenario, just because the Rams are going to be, Higbee, Atwell, Van, all going to be pretty popular. But if I were to do it, I would do Van because Atwell is going to be really chalky at 3K.
Yeah. Okay. So throw in Van, and then throw in the Browns defense.
You love your running back.
I just want to get a D in there because I think
That's
your
Andrew.
regular person likes to know how much that they have left. So with a wide receiver and flex, we got, what is that? About 4,900 per player. So it's
So
something.
cute.
It's
So
something.
I'm a big Dayton Reed fan. I mentioned, I think he's a really good player. He's going to be the wide receiver 3 to start for Green Bay. I wouldn't be surprised if he passed Romeo Dobbs at some point here. And Dobbs and Watson both banged up. Like, that's talk about the volume play. Just everyone's playing either Mims or Atwell. So you got a little bit of a pivot there. Reed would become more popular if Dobbs or Watson are ruled out. But for now, it gives you 6,700 to play with. And that's, you do want to play some value on this slate. So that's kind of where I would go.
All right. So
You're double.
ragtagged our way to a lineup week 1. There's just so much that you have to kind of wiggle your way through. But I think there's a lot of tough matchups. My personal advice would be, if you need to weed some out, those divisional matchups, they're going to be crusty. Even though my men's warehouse is Chubb, that's kind of like one of the exceptions that I have in there. But some of those other games where you have two divisional opponents playing each other, those ones always kind of, as my quarterback is from one of those games and my men's warehouse is from one of those games. But just in general, I don't know. There's a lot of potential crust on the board, and I think that's reflected with the over-unders, like Gary said. But you know how it goes as each week goes on and the injuries start to mount and then the buys start to come in. That's where we focus. That's where we try to get our success. Let's just enjoy having week 1. All your fantasy lineups, whether it's season long, best ball, DFS, or sports betting, there's nothing better than week 1 because you got all your little tickets stacked up. And you usually end up losing, and then you're depressed by week 2, and you're waiting for the end of the season until the next Sunday comes along, and then you're re-excited once again. But it's a great time of the year. As soon as this heat wave from hell passes, we're right into the fall, and this is this is the best stretch of the year that starts right now, tomorrow night.
Just real quick before we go, some word out of Saints Beats just now on Twitter that Kendra Miller not looking likely to play. So this is going to be, I think Jamal Williams is a good job. I think he's a good job. That's all I'll say. He's, to me, the Michael Pittman of last year. I keep mentioning that, but he was in the 5K where, sorry, hold on.
And you make sure if you're over 21 and you're betting on NFL, that you take those over on receptions for Jamal Williams, because there's only so many seasons we have left of using Phillip Rivers and Derek Carr. We're out of Rivers. All we got left is a year or 2 of Carr checkdowns to cash these free bets. So you enjoy that week 1. We'll be back with you next week for week 2. Who knows? Sometimes like when you don't want the girl and you're not excited, that's actually the one that wants you. Watch Gary bank one of these $25,000 tournaments that he's like, oh yeah, I checked it late and I ended up winning the whole thing. That's sometimes how it works. We'll see how it goes, but good luck to you, Gary. Better luck to me. And no luck to Joe Blow, because that ain't even going to save him.
Happy to be back. I hope we get Joe Blow every week, by the way. Would love an appearance.
Do you want live Joe Blow or that version? Because I kind of like getting to pause him. And
this is so better. It's so much better. It's as much as I love seeing Joe Blow. It's always good to see an acquaintance. I wouldn't call Joe Blow a friend, an acquaintance. It's way better to get the pre-recorded and we can just rip it apart.
And anybody out there, if you ever want to send a lineup like Joe Blow did to us and have us critique, Gary will always be nice. If sometimes I'm nice, sometimes I'm not, but you can feel free to send those to us. We'll definitely include them.
To our loyal listeners, I will definitely. Andy is correct. I will definitely be nice to Joe Blow Public. I have no problems laughing a lot to Joe Blow Public. That's Joe Blow Public. But to you guys out there, if you want to send us a lineup that maybe would be featured on the show, if you get it in. We usually record on Wednesdays. You get in a lineup by Monday or Tuesday to us. I'd be happy to make that a little segment this year. It'd be fun.
Definitely. All right, everybody. We'll be back with you next week. Make sure you subscribe to the show. Follow it on YouTube, whatever platform you're listening or watching on. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends about it. And who knows? Maybe you win $1 million or two. Let us know if you do, and throw me a quick 100 or 2. I don't know. I'm not trying to rhyme like B Rabbit right now. It's just happening to go that way.
Are we on TikTok?
All right, Gary. Huh?
Are we on TikTok? Isn't that
We
how you
got
grow?
a TikTok. I'm gonna have my younger brother put our shit on TikTok.
Oh, shout out to your younger brother. That's great. I have no idea how to use TikTok, but I think that's how you grow things. That's what I hear.
They
I'm a
say
dad.
that, but it's a scam. It's scam people growing on TikTok. Like, you know, oh yeah, name me one celebrity stemming from TikTok. Oh yeah, that's right. You never see someone on TikTok in a Nike commercial. They're all like, you go on TikTok, it's some guy in the back of a car. Oh, I went on a date with this girl, and yeah, and then that's it. And then that's it. This random person just the way I. All right, sorry guys, you got me up now.
No,
the way
really
I equate TikTok is guests on game shows. Like, yeah, Wheel of Fortune, yeah, they bring in a new guest and yeah, they're on TV for a day, but then they're off the show and that's it. Only Pat Sajak is the one you know about. All these people on TikTok, they have their one random viral video and then they shuffle them off to the side. Their monikers there, their gimmicks. You have to do the same thing every time. There's a guy who just drinks a White Claw in every video and goes, fuck yeah, baby. That's his whole moniker. I don't think when I'm watching a red carpet, it's going to be DiCaprio, Cruz, and the fuck yeah, baby White Claw guy. It's a scam. It always has been. It always will be. And that's my full feelings on TikTok.
I had nothing to add to that except the Vanna White disrespect. You say only Pat Sajak is who you remember. That is some Vanna White disrespect right there, Andy. But I kid. I don't watch Real Fortune at all.
These kids don't know anyone over 25 on TikTok, you know? So they're not going to know Sajak, so I figured I wouldn't even include Vanna White. But we'll be back with you guys next week. All right, hope you enjoyed that last second rant. Take it easy. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next week.
Subscription is fucking Cyborg. Subscription as Cyborg. Subscription as Cyborg. Fucking Chubb.